Hello everyone, and today we're back into another Loomian Legacy Top 5, and today we're going to be talking about the top 15 PVP Loomians. Now, I made a video about the top 5 PVP Loomians, and I wanted to re-update it in 2023, and this was one of the hardest lists to make. So let's get into our top 15 right about now. But before we do that, we're doing another giveaway, and we are giving away this Gamma Icigool. Yes, we are giving away a Gamma Icigool. This is probably my rarest find in the Jolly Village event so far. So yeah, if you want this Gamma Icigool, just say Gamma Icigool in the comments below. I will give you a number, and within a few days, we'll spin a random number generator wheel, and if your number is picked, you'll have a chance to win this Gamma Icigool. So let's head into this top 15. Number 15 on the list is actually going to be Luminami. Luminami just barely made the list. But this thing is extremely powerful. With the Power Napper ability and Flash and Flee Pivot, this basically can soak the hit, do damage, and get HP back. Luminami might be one of the best pivot Loomians in all of Loomian Legacy, just because of Power Napper and Flash and Flee. And this actually has been one of the best Loomians in the game for a very long time now. But I wonder what y'all are thinking. Why is Luminami this far low at number 15? Well, there are simply a lot of plant types in the meta right now that can actually just soak the Flash and Flee. Not to mention Eclipse as well. Eclipse is also a thing. And while you can hit plant types at Frost Beam, Luminami doesn't one-shot most plant types at Frost Beam. And it's usually going to click Flash and Flee anyway, so it kind of struggles. It is still a very good pivot user and can be game-changing, especially when putting pressure on the other team. But Luminami has fallen all the way to number 15. But Luminami still made the top 15. Number 14 on the list is actually going to be Wintrix. Now, Wintrix is probably one of the scariest Loomians in the entire game. With the Wise ability, there are no Loomians that can swap into a Wintrix. None. The only Loomians that can swap in are range tanks, and most range tanks are weak to Wintrix. So, Wintrix is extremely scary. And while its offensive typing is absolutely awful, Wise makes up for it. You can also run the Chill ability to do more damage. You have Peace of Mind. You have Provoke. You have Perch. This thing is really, really good. It definitely is a top 15 Loomian. Some people could even consider this a top 10 or a top 5. I was even debating about putting it higher than 14, but I think 14 is a great spot for Wintrix. Mainly just because it does have a low damage roll. Like, its damage is not as high compared to other Loomians. At least when you consider the fact that it doesn't have an ability to increase its damage other than Chill. And if you won Wise, you do lose a damage increase from Chill. So that's why Wintrix isn't any higher. But this thing is extremely scary, considering that there are no Loomians that can effectively swap into a Wintrix. And that's why Wintrix is in the top 15. This is definitely one of the scariest Loomians in the entire game. Number 13 on the list is actually going to be Vesparatu. Now, people would be shocked that Vesparatu was on the list. And spoiler alert, your soul did not make the list. Yes, and Uber not in the top 15. And the reason why your soul's not on the list is because I think Vesparatu performs a little bit better. With Slash, it can actually hit the clips. And not only hit the clips, it can actually hit Cephalops for neutrally as well. Meaning that you could actually 2-shot to clips and 3-shot Cephalops. So, 2 supposed walls for Vesparatu can now get hit. Not to mention that it has Slapdown Stab, Phantom Slash to hit hard, Shadow Sprint priority, and Revival. The reason why I consider Vesparatu better than Ursul, even though Ursul has better coverage and better priority options, this hits harder with Slapdown, has healing, and has better melee bulk, which makes Vesparatu better for their long run. It can even counter other spirit types. This is one of the few spirit types that can counter other spirit types, which is amazing. That's the reason why Vesparatu's in the top 15 and Ursul's not at all. Vesparatu could be considered an Uber itself, honestly. This thing can hit really hard and can do a lot of damage, and that's why it's in the top 15 and probably the best starter in the game right now. Number 12 on the list is actually going to be Tundralen. Yes, the original number 1 on the top 5 PvP Loomians. And this thing is still very powerful. Resilience, Body Crash, Rejuvenate, Bulk Up. Yeah, this is one of the tankiest melee tanks in the entire game, especially once you get a couple resilience boosts. And with Body Crash, you use that high melee defense to hit other Loomians extremely hard in return. Its melee defense is its attack. That's what makes Tundralen so deadly. And while this isn't as good as Obsidrugon because of its bad defensive typing, I mean, Pure Ice is not as good as Pure Ancient. It does have a couple things that does make it better than Obsidrugon. I mean, Rejuvenate, when Obsidrugon has Beast Slumber. Not to mention that Ice can hit air types. So, Tundralen does have a couple advantages over Obsidrugon. Does it mean it's better than Obsidrugon? No. But this is a really good option. And it's still in the top 15, just because of how hard it hits and how it can effectively heal. This thing is still one of the best melee tanks in the entire game and is number 12 on this list. So yeah, number 11 on this list is actually going to be Tyrecks. Yes, another Loomian on the original top 5 PvP Loomians. And this thing is amazing. It hits Tundralen and Venelen. Yes, it hits the Tundralen, Obsidrugon, Venelen meta. And it hits them super effectively. Has an amazing defensive typing. Has so many different resistances. Can actually lower the melee attack from other melee attacking Loomians. Meaning that it's really unstoppable on the melee side. You have to hit it super effectively on the melee side if you really want to chip it. And not to mention that its range defense is also pretty high. It can scapegoat and it also has setup. Tyrecks is definitely a top PvP Loomian in the entire game, and it definitely deserves to be in the top 15. The only reason it's actually out of the top 10, honestly, is because it has 5 weaknesses. And those 5 weaknesses are, like, pretty common, like Brawler, Fire, like... The weaknesses Tyrecks has are pretty bad, and that's why Tyrecks is not in the top 10. But despite that, though, Tyrecks can hit the meta. It can actually soak so many hits and can just straight up wall a lot of Loomians. And that's why Tyrecks is one of the scariest Loomians in the game. Number 10. We have reached the top 10, and number 10 is Barbadger. This thing, oh my gosh. This thing was insane. Dauntless. If the opposing Loomian has a super effective move that can hit you, this thing gets a +1 melee attack boost. And I know what you're thinking. You swap into a Loomian that does not have a super effective move. You click Brawn Boost. Yes, you click Brawn Boost. And while this Loomian does not have an ability to actually increase its damage other than Dauntless, it has a 120 power stab with a 95 power stab Ice Hammer, and it even has Earth coverage that can lower the opposing Loomian's speed. Yeah, this thing is a top 10 Loomian. And even though there are Loomians that can beat this, like Spirit types, this thing is extremely scary. Actually, it was between this and another Loomian in the honorable mentions that was really close. Like, this was very close to not being on the list, but this thing is so scary. Rogue Assault hits so hard that it can one-shot a lot of Loomians. This is definitely one of the top melee wall breakers in the entire game, and it's definitely a top 10 Loomian. Barbadger simply hits so hard, and while its defensive typing isn't good, Dauntless makes its defensive typing a strength, and that's why it's on the list. Number 9 on the list is actually going to be Venelen, one of the best range tanks in the entire game, and yes, of course Venelen was going to make the list. It can heavy shackle Loomians, it has great range defense, and even solid melee defense. Has Devious to poison Stratosaurs, has Toxic Touch to nail melee attackers, and has Earth coverage. This thing is extremely scary. Venelen is just the stereotypical range tank. This is the range tank you want on all your teams. This thing can soak hits on the range side while doing everything more. This has a lot of utility. It actually hits pretty solidly hard for a range tank, which is actually really insane. I mean, over 100 range attack for a range tank is really nice. Venelen is definitely one of the top range tanks in the entire game, and the only reason why it's not higher is because I just think the other Loomians are a little bit better overall. Nothing's towards Venelen. Venelen has almost no flaws, and while this thing can get beaten by melee attackers, it can actually utilize it pretty well with Toxic Touch. Venelen is one of the top range tanks in the entire game, and is one of the reasons why the range meta is really scary, because yeah, there are not many other range tanks that can be utilized as well as Venelen, and that's why it's on the list. Number 8 on the list is actually going to be Deludrix. Deludrix is probably one of the best offensive Loomians in the game, or at least the Loomian that puts the most pressure. Deludrix's coverage. Oh my goodness. It has some of the best coverage in the entire game, and it has pivot. It has offensive pivot as well, meaning that it's not going to take damage most of the time, which makes Deludrix one of the best offensive Loomians in the entire game. It's also one of the best Loomians to put pressure on the opposing Loomian, which definitely puts Deludrix really high. A lot of people even consider Deludrix an Uber, and well, I don't think Deludrix is Uber's level of good. This thing is extremely scary, mainly just the fact that if you make the right predicts, Deludrix can destroy the entire meta. Deludrix can hit Stratosaur, Deludrix can hit Fire types, Brawler types, and that's why it's number 8 on the list. It's simply fantastic. I mean, it makes sense. Its coverage is amazing. It can hit pretty much anything in the game, which just is amazing. And while there are range tanks that can soak hits, it doesn't drop Deludrix that much, considering that you can just pivot out with Zip Zap. And that's why Deludrix is number 8 on this list. Number 7 on this list is actually going to be Lantern, aka Cosmiore Unleashed. Yes, this might have been one of the hardest Loomians to rank on the list. I wanted to put this in the top 3 just because of Surrogate. And you could Surrogate Appetite. Appetite Cosmiore might be the most unstoppable and broken Loomian in the entire game. And I'm seriously talking more broken than number 1. But if you don't Surrogate Appetite, it's still very solid. It's probably one of the best teammates out of any Loomian in the entire game. If you Surrogate Ace, Wise, you could Surrogate pretty much any ability from the entire game. And like I said, Appetite Cosmiore. The only reason it's dropped this far is because it does lose a lot of defense, especially on the range side. And not to mention that all Cosmiore forms can actually get walled by metal types. So Cosmiore does struggle against metal types. But even then, Cosmiore Unleashed is still one of the best teammates out of any Loomian in the entire game. Considering you could just Surrogate an ability, you could pretty much sack the Loomian, take their ability, and then your Cosmiore uses it. It's amazing. There's no other Loomians that can use it that effectively other than Cosmiore. Like, Cosmiore is literally one of a kind, and this thing deserves to be in the top 10. Number 6 onto this list is actually going to be Barbblast. Barbblast is probably one of the best overall tanks in the game. While Tundralen and Obsidrugon might be the best melee tank, and while Venelen might be the best range, Barbblast can soak hits on both sides. Yes, it's probably one of the best overall tanks. I don't think there's any Loomian in the game that can one-shot Barbblast, which is just kind of insane to think about. I guess the only one I could potentially see is a Phagenaut. A secret ability Phagenaut, but even then, I still don't think it could one-shot this thing, especially if it's clever. It's a toxic water type. Amazing typing. I'm shocked I didn't put it on the dual typings list. I'll put that video in the description below. This thing is amazing. It can poison, can place icicle traps, can hit fire types. This is probably one of the best tanks in the entire game. And even though it has more weaknesses than Venelen, it also has more resistances, which is the reason why Barbblast is actually higher than Venelen. I mean, it's soaking your soul hits! It's soaking your soul hits. And that's why Barbblast is number 6, although it just barely misses out on the top 5. And these top 5 Loomians are some of the best Loomians in the entire game, but sadly, Barbblast just fell short. Number 5 under the list is actually going to be Pyrolen. Yes, the best Vari in the entire game. This thing? My gosh. We're getting into broken territories with this thing. One of the best range wall breakers in the entire game right here. And if you're running Fanning Flame, you lose your air weakness. It utilizes it as your strength. You get hit by an air-type move, you run a Rageful Plushie, and you get +3. +3 for a Loomian that has 133 range attack. Yeah, and it also has Tyrecks coverage, which means it can pretty much hit anything in the entire game apart from Barbblast. So, yeah, Pyrolen is amazing. And if you're running the volcanic version, then you know the ability that makes Pyrolen absolutely nuke every Loomian in the entire game, you can one-shot any Loomian from neutral damage, which is just amazing. Pyrolen is one of the best Varis in the entire game, mainly because of a very good offensive typing and coverage, insane attack, healing with Rejuvenate, Peace of Mind for setup, and also its amazing defensive typing that's made even better with Fanning Flame. Pyrolen is top 5. There is no other reasons or doubt. Pyrolen is in the top 5. Number 4 onto the list is going to be Mutagon. Broad Boost, Quick Punch, you win. Oh gosh. This is one of the only Ubers which I still consider an Uber. This thing is broken. It's the pure definition of broken. You can pretty much beat any Loomian in the entire game with this apart from Vesparatu or Dusket. This thing nukes everything. And I'm not just talking about its secret ability. Its tank ability is just as OP, if not even more. Mainly because you could soak more hits, get a Rageful Plushie boost, and then you're up to +4. This thing is insane. This thing can beat pretty much any Loomian in the entire game, like I said, apart from Vesparatu and Dusket. This thing is absolutely amazing. And you could pretty much just use it brainlessly too, and you could still win. This thing is one of the most broken Loomians in the entire game. And it can actually beat Tundralen and Obsidrugon due because you resist its moves. Despite that though, there are still Loomians that are better than this. And there are still Loomians that are more broken than Mutagon. So yeah, Mutagon unfortunately falls short of the top 3, but it's nothing towards Mutagon because these top 3 Loomians are just more broken than it. So yeah. Number 3 onto this list is actually going to be Cosmiore Cracked. Yes, we got 2 Cosmiore forms on this list. And Cosmiore Cracked is the most broken of the bunch. Because this Loomian has everything. High attack, setup, healing moves, high melee defense, high range attack, and a solid speed stat. This Loomian is pretty much the perfect Loomian you could pretty much ever have in the entire game. And it gets even better with Enchanted Coat. You can run Enchanted Coat Rageful Plushie, meaning that you can absolutely nuke anything in the game and heal the HP back. Cosmiore Crack is cracked. Even against metal types you can beat, just because of Enchanted Coat and Peace of Mind. Cosmiore Cracked is that busted. And if you don't have a metal type, good luck on beating Cosmiore Cracked. This thing can pretty much destroy your entire team, and it's actually one of the best Obsidrugon counters in the entire game as well, which makes Cosmiore Cracked even better. I mean, in this battle, it carried me. I got destroyed in this battle, and it carried me to the dub. This is one of the best Loomians in the entire game, and it definitely deserves to be in the top 3. Although it is arguable that Cosmiore Unleashed could be placed higher, I think Cosmiore Crack is just a lot better overall. Number 2 onto this list is actually going to be Eclipse. No shockers here. Eclipse makes the top 3, and this thing is still very OP. One of the best offensive typings in the game, one of the best defensive typings in the entire game. And that's not even mentioning Total Eclipse, which gives you more immunities and weaknesses. And if you're hit by a dark or light type move, you get a speed boost. Yeah, this thing is very broken, and it is one of the best Loomians in the entire game, especially for team building. And while I don't think it's as annoying as it used to be, considering that Vesparatu now just had Slash, and a couple other spirit types have had moves to hit the Eclipse is still one of those broken Loomians in the entire game. This thing hits extremely hard. Dark Light is one of the best offensive typings in the entire game. You can hit pretty much anything neutrally, even other Eclipses with Raging Howl. Eclipse definitely deserves to be on this list. It is one of the best Loomians in the entire game, especially for team building, even though it doesn't have any healing, even though it doesn't have an ability to increase its damage. This thing still deserves number 2. And if it wasn't for a certain other broken Loomian, this would be easily number 1. But Eclipse is definitely broken, and it definitely deserves to be in number 2. So, yeah. Honorable mentions, and oh my gosh, there are so many honorable mentions, and here they are. You could consider this our top 30. Helvantic was pretty much the odd one out that lost to Barbadger, but all of these Loomians could all be considered top 10, top 15 worthy. We also have Ursul and Metronet, and these Loomians are Ubers that just missed the list. I'm going to talk about why they didn't make the list in another day, but Ursul didn't make it because of Vesparatu, and Metronet didn't make it because I found it more annoying than actually really OP, considering it has Hypnotize and Peace of Mind. But I'll go into more details about why Ursul and Metronet did not make the list on another day. So yeah, the best PvP Loomian in the entire game is Obsidrugon. No shockers here. Obsidrugon is literally OP. I mean, I've talked about this guy before. Resilience, Body Crash, Primal Slash to hit Spirit types, Beast Slumber. It even has Earth and Dark coverage with a very solid melee defense stat. You could also run Rageful Plushie and Drudge. Pure Ancient, one of the best defensive typings in the entire game. And let's get to the clips. I talked about these clips before, but my gosh. Are you ready to see a Gargolem attack form not even two-shot in Obsidrugon? Yeah, this thing is OP, especially with Beast Slumber, because Beast Slumber increases not just your melee defense, but it also increases your range defense, meaning that not even really range attackers can break through this thing while you're asleep. And I have Loomians like Zeppelin. Let's keep in mind, Zeppelin with Turbulent and Smart with an Air Essence cannot even one-shot Obsidrugon. Yeah, and I kept giving this thing resilience boosts, meaning that he can just click Body Crash, and guess what this Obsidrugon does? Sweep. Swept my entire team. Primal Slash? Nah, doesn't do anything because of all the resilience boosts. This thing is one of the best Loomians in the entire game by a long shot. I would even say a lot better than Eclipse. Its Eclipse was already broken. This thing is that overpowered. The only way you can probably effectively beat it is if you have a range attacker with Provoke, and even then, Obsidrugon is still busted and definitely deserves the number 1 spot. And here it is, Obsidrugon, the best PvP Loomian in the entire game. We're starting 2023 with a bang with a top 15. And honestly, all those Loomians in the honorable mention and on this list could also be considered top 10. And yeah, this was one of the hardest top 5s to ever make. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see y'all all later. Bye-bye!